So, Willie, we have major news to get to out of New York City. Why don't we start there?
Yeah, we sure do, Mika. This front page, of course, of all the newspapers here in New York City. New York Post, Eric Adams saying, "I am a target." And then Daily News simply writing, "Indicted." The news here in New York is that Mayor Eric Adams is expected to face federal charges from prosecutors out of the Southern District of New York as early as today, according to a couple of sources familiar with the matter. The indictment remains sealed as of last night, but CNBC reports the indictment in part accuses Adams of criminal conduct related to donations to his 2021 mayoral campaign. The mayor released a statement last night in response, denying wrongdoing while vowing to stay in office. He then released a video addressing his fellow New Yorkers.
It is now my belief that the federal government intends to charge me with crimes. If so, these charges will be entirely false, based on lies. But they would not be surprising. I always knew that if I stood my ground for all of you, that I would be a target, and a target I became. Enough. I will fight these injustices with every ounce of my strength and my spirit. If I'm charged, I know I am innocent. I will request an immediate trials so the New Yorkers can hear the truth.
Let's bring in NBC News national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter and former litigator and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin. Good morning to you both. So, Tom, we expect probably later today to get some detail about what's inside this indictment and what the mayor of New York City is accused of. A lot of this centers around Turkey and donations to the campaign in 2021. And for people who haven't been following this, don't live in New York City, this comes sort of at the end of a long domino effect of people who've fallen. The police commissioner stepping aside, the health commissioner stepping aside, the schools commissioner as well, fire officials, fire safety division officials being charged in bribery schemes. So what do we know about what the mayor is being charged with here?
So to your point, this investigation really kicked off in earnest almost a year ago on November 2nd when Breonna Skuggs, who was the head of his campaign, was searched. The mayor was in Washington, D.C. at that moment, and we had heard all across town that there was some sort of law activity going on and that there was some sort of something that was afoot. But when it was the mayor, when he canceled abruptly his plans and decided to immediately come home to New York, that we first got an indication of, oh, something pretty serious is going on. And initially, we didn't know that it was a search tied to his campaign. People were even wondering if there was some sort of a terrorist type of attack. Obviously, that was less than a month after October 7th. And then the investigation really took the next level on November 6th of last year, when the mayor, surrounded by his police detail, out and about in the course of his business, is approached by multiple FBI agents, and they ask and demand for his phone and his iPad. And then more recently, in September this year, just after Labor Day, Phil Banks, the deputy mayor of public safety, oversees the NYPD and FDNY, phone taken. David Banks, who you just referenced before, the school's chancellor, phone taken. Sheena Wright, key advisor, first deputy mayor, one of the most loyal and one of the most important advisors to Mayor Eric Adams. Her phone is taken. She's the wife of David Banks. And then on Saturday night, 2 Saturdays ago, we get out of the blue a letter from their attorney, Lisa Zornberg, saying, you know, I've decided to move on effectively. So this has been developing and building. Specific to your question, Willie, we don't know the exact types of charges. You referenced the Turkish donations and whether or not the Turkish consulate here in New York, that their safety approvals were fast-tracked in exchange for some sort of donation or for benefits or gifts. That certainly could be a component of it. I don't think the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York only charges based on that one specific incident. So there's a number of things that we're hearing, a number of things that we're continuing to report out, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is a large indictment with significant charges on it, because I think that's the type of level that you would get to go after the mayor of the city of New York.
Yeah, Lisa, coming out of the Southern District, this is going to be major. But the fact that federal prosecutors are looking into this and have been for a long time, it's been almost, as Tom just laid out really well, almost a year, about 10 months of this slow roll of, as Tom mentioned, the mayor being approached as he walked out at an event down in the Village by federal officials. Give us your phones, give us your devices. So what do you expect to hear today if and when this is unsealed?
I expect, as Tom does, that there could be multiple charges against the mayor. What we don't know is who else could be charged here. And there are, based on what we know just about the investigative steps that the Southern District has taken, any number of people, both who worked in an official capacity and an unofficial capacity on the 2021 campaign, who could be charged. One of the things I'm really looking for today is who is not named as a defendant in this, whether or not there are unnamed co-conspirators, for example, in this indictment, or there are people who don't appear at all who you would have expected to appear. New York Times reported several months ago that one of the mayor's aides, a woman named Rana Abasova, is said to have been cooperating with federal investigators here. Whether she appears in this indictment, either by name or by reference, is something I'm particularly focused on.
Jonathan Lemire, you can put on your Daily News alum cap right now for the next couple of questions. Going back even to the beginning of his campaign, there are always whispers about Mayor Adams' ethics, ethical questions swirling around him for some time. But you'd ask somebody, what specifically, and you'd never get any specifics, but that was something that everybody said followed him around, that you would talk to, that knew New York politics. So first, speak to that. And secondly, if you will, speak to the number of politicians, including Andrew Cuomo, who are now going to begin posturing themselves to run in a special election to be New York's next mayor.
Yeah, certainly Eric Adams, a meteoric rise. He was a police officer, formed a group there of 100 blacks in law enforcement who care, then transitioned into politics. He was Brooklyn Borough president, and from there launched his mayoral campaign. But during that rise, as you note correctly, Joe, there were always whispers, in New York political circles, in law enforcement circles, that something was not quite right. It became a campaign issue. He was investigated previously, but never charged. And then, he won in 2021, with a pretty resounding number and a popular at first coming out of the pandemic. But what we have seen here is these questions have dogged him throughout. As Tom just laid out, this has been something that's been going on for a while. And this, we're still going to learn more later today when this indictment is unsealed. But there are 4 different federal probes right now ongoing into Adams and his inner circle. So this may not be the only case that comes to fruition with charges in the weeks and months ahead. Eric Adams, as we played last night, he's vowing to fight this. He's vowing to continue. He is now the first mayor in New York City's history to be charged with a crime while in office. A sort of stunning statistic. And yes, they're already, because his poll numbers were so low, there are already a number of Democrats, city officials, former comptroller, public advocate, councilmen who have announced that they will challenge him in the Democratic primary next year. There's no real Republican opposition. The Democratic primary normally in New York is the gateway to City Hall. And yes, one name who has not jumped in officially yet, but strongly rumored to be weighing a bid, is former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo.
And Scott Stringer, the former comptroller here, who's going to run, obviously, for mayor again, this time has called for Mayor Adams to resign. AOC also has called for Mayor Adams to resign. That list is growing. Just to underscore here, Tom Winter, we saw in the space of just a few days, the police commissioner resign on September 12th. Mayor Adams' chief counsel 3 days later resigned. The next day, 2 fire department division safety chiefs were arrested, and then the school's chancellor a few days ago stepped aside as well. And that's just a few of them, by the way. So I know we don't know specifically what's going to be in this indictment, but we use sort of Turkey as shorthand for shady connections, allegedly. What exactly are we talking about here? What have we heard from reporting that may have happened here with the mayor? Yeah,
I think you're looking at a situation where you may have pay for play, and that's essentially what is being hinted at, what is being reported at with respect to the Turkey component of it. And the question is, are there going to be other countries that are going to be involved in it? I think that's a big concern. I think, Jonathan mentioned the 4 investigations, true, involving City Hall, but we've got additional investigations, including one involving Winnie Greco, who's the liaison to the Asian community, as assigned by the mayor's office. She's under federal investigation. She had her home searched. We believe that that is in part separate from some of the things that we're talking about here today. And so that is a name that I'm going to be looking for over the next couple of hours, if not the next couple of months. So I think that's something to keep an eye on. I think when we look at this as far as additional charges referencing the 4 investigations involving City Hall. You've got 2 other investigations that are going on right now. There's a new, freshly opened investigation into the sheriff of the city of New York, allegations that he was skimming off of money that was taken from illegal marijuana shops in New York City. That seems to be its own separate silo. And then you've got the ongoing investigation involving the New York City Police Department. You referenced the resignation of Edward Caban, the police commissioner. A number of other top police commanders had their phones taken. That appears to be a separate investigation involving pay-to-play accusations there again.
Phones being taken left and right if you're in charge here in New York City. Lisa, just quickly, it's worth stopping and pointing out for all the charges of weaponization of the Justice Department by Republicans, long hearings that they've been held. It's a narrative. There are an awful lot of prominent Democrats now that are being investigated. Turns out if you're alleged to have done something wrong, Democrat or Republican, you might be brought up on charges.
Yes, and despite that, one of the things I thought was notable about Eric Adams' response last night is it seemed particularly Trumpy, right? That because I made particular pledges to clean up this city, I am now a target because of my views on the migrant situation. That's not what's going on here at all. The Biden's Justice Department is not seeking out people based on their political belief and prosecuting them. Rather, what they're doing is following the facts without fear or favor. We see that happening to both Republicans and Democrats alike now. Eric Adams puts an end to the Trump call of weaponization, and yet he is also drawing from former President Trump's own defense in his public statements now.
MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin, NBC News national law enforcement and intelligence correspondent Tom Winter. Thank you both. We appreciate it. Much more to come on this, I'm sure. And Mika, by the way, all of this coming during UN General Assembly week here in New York City.